Afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Super Dave joining us now as well. But firstly, congratulations to everyone that raced this last weekend. There was obviously a very large contingent at 70.3 Worlds. We had a quite bizarrely enjoyable, very fun and huge group of athletes at the pre-race meeting. We had about 125 people show up for the pre-race meeting. We had 75 athletes racing. We had over 100 athletes racing globally literally across the world this weekend, which was absolutely fantastic. And the toughest race, well, everyone will tell you the toughest race was Chattanooga, 70.3 Worlds, but they would be very wrong, because certainly the toughest race this weekend was Ironman Wales, which is probably one of the toughest terrain courses that's out there anyway in the Ironman. But they had sustained 30-mile-an-hour winds this weekend and freezing, very cold rain for the entire race. So I'm going to give special congratulations to Eric Maresco, who finished his first Ironman this weekend in very strong and consistent form throughout, going through something like that. What a way to do your first Ironman. I cannot think of a tougher first experience. But everyone, fantastic. Myself as a coach, I got asked the question whether I was disappointed to only have fourth place in the male pro race this weekend, as though the expectation is to always win a world championships every single year. But I was very, very happy with our performances globally. I thought it was an incredibly tough race, a wonderful race in Chattanooga, Safari's setting. And my most enjoyable piece of the weekend, outside of seeing everyone, seeing all of the purple patch athletes, seeing the attitude, seeing the execution, seeing so many people race, and so many great personal achievements there, personal races there. If I take my purple patch hat off, by far the best thing of the weekend for me was the fact that the splitting of the two races opened up the venue, the avenue for the women to truly shine. And it was great to have a Saturday race that you could genuinely see not just the women's professional race, but the women's amateur race unfold. And you didn't have to be looking for the women amongst the cloud of male racers. It was wonderful. The spectacle was the same. It didn't feel like the supporting cast. It felt like two main events. And I thought it was great for women's sport. So I think you have to give a tip of the hat to Ironman for listening, for changing many of the rules, many of the setups for this weekend's race to make it a fairer race, and also giving the opportunity for the women to shine. It was one of the best things I've seen, and one of the most enjoyable days of spectating I've had is watching a pure women's race in that venue, in that course, and it made terrific watching for both the men and the women's race. So it was a great weekend, and again, well done to everyone. The focus of today, very briefly, is I'm just going to spend 10 minutes, but I want to spend just a little bit of time framing late season racing and the mindset for late season racing. And this came up with a couple of conversations that I actually had in Chattanooga at 70.3 Worlds. And we are now 5 weeks or so, less than 5 weeks away from the Hawaii Ironman, but we also have other races coming up towards the late season. Ironman Arizona, Ironman Cozumel. We also have Augusta in a couple of weeks, Austin, Miami if it still goes ahead. I'm not sure on that. But we still have plenty of racing to go, and people are still immersed in training for that racing. And I think this is a really good time to actually make sure that we're all cemented with the mindset that we want for late season Ironman, half Ironman racing. And in fact, Olympic distance, it goes down to Olympic distance at all. It's just that the negative effects of some of the mistaken mindset will express themselves at a greater degree in the longer distance. So with that, let's frame it. Let's go through. Then we can maybe answer some questions, and then with the nice group that we got on here today, we can go into some other questions as well. So I think that there is a really distinct difference in physiological, practical planning and mindset approach to late season races than there is generally in early season races. I think late season races provide a little bit of high risk for the athlete when they actually aim to look into every nook and cranny for the last piece of magical success. And so often athletes make the big mistakes in the big races at the back end of the year. And a great example is trying to get down to just that extra special race weight, that little bit lighter, so maybe it can improve their run or their power to weight ratio. Trying to accumulate that little extra bit of fitness by coming through with some extra training that's already arriving on the back end of many, many months of training. And I see more than any other times, because it is the back end of the year, because it is typically layered on the back end of the season, too many athletes globally show up emotionally and physically tired. They show up emotionally, physically, and tired from a long season or poor supporting habits and too much training in that last 2 or 3 months. And they show up empty on race day. And 9 times out of 10, it's in the pursuit of getting that extra edge. Versus real success, as we're going to find out today, is based more in keeping doing what goes well for you and what works well for you, and keeping things very, very simple. Don't change what works. Don't change what works is the really important. So let's first take a step back and let's have a little bit of a reminder in early season racing. So if we think about races that occur in Northern Hemisphere, March, but particularly April and into May, our first season, the first races that most athletes start to actually come into their initial racing of the year, at least triathlons of the year. We're on this progression up when those races come. So we're still building fitness, we're still building resilience, and our mindset when we hit early season races is it's a stepping stone to future success. So quite often our approach to racing is to have a little bit more of a progressive building approach. We want to make sure that the back end of the bike and the back end of the run is our strongest element. We want them to be learning physiologically and emotionally. And they're set amongst a ramping emphasis in training load, a ramping element of fitness gains. So we're not really at race readiness. We also often talk about the hardness of the legs or the fitness of the legs that comes out of pure racing. In early season racing, you're on the way up, and in many ways, the pressure is off. In many ways, it's on the upswing that you're building, and we still feel like we've got this journey of the bigger events coming later in the year. Of course, there are sometimes some differences in that. If you're doing Ironman Texas and you're looking to qualify to Hawaii and you want all of your eggs in basket in that earlier season race, then sure, there's a little bit of a different mindset and your season might be set up differently to get you ready for that Ironman. But as a general rule, we're on the upswing, we're progressing, and the races are featuring as a mindset, as a stepping stone. So we're not down to the serious business yet. We then get into the summer races and people start to have key races. And maybe if we're lucky, or I should say if we're smart, you have time to integrate a little bit of a break and you come back off of that break a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, where your training stress is a little bit low. And we now venture forth to the back end of the season, the bookend of the season where championship races occur, Hawaii, and as we had this last weekend, Chattanooga, as well as a lot of the late season races, which are for many athletes, are their big races of the year. People that are getting ready for things like Ironman Arizona or other races like that. When we look at that, this is what we're defining. This is what we're talking about today. And for the majority of our athletes, we already have a few races behind us. So we're actually arriving at this place with some months of training, some months of racing, and get to a place that as we approach the last build into your big race or last races of the season, you are already very, very fit. You already have a resilience. you are already strong and fit. And what we're actually looking to do in the back end of the year is we're looking to get race ready, which is very different than being on the upswing, looking to develop fitness, etc. And so we have to set the lens. We actually have to start to say, okay, what are we looking to accomplish when we get ready for the back end races of the year? Well, the first thing that's important to establish, and it's going to sound a little paradoxical for you, is we're not actually looking to get much fitter at the fundamental level. What we're really doing from a setting the lens standpoint is we're looking to get race ready. So at this time of the year, with the assumption that you have been training, it's only a late season race if you have been training all year. If you arrive in July and say, well, I'm going to start training for Ironman Arizona, that's no longer a late season race outside of the calendar year. But when we're talking about a late season race, that means that you have developed or secured, for most part, a season length of training behind you. So you've already gone through post-season, hopefully, you've gone through pre-season, you've gone through early season racing and a round of race-specific training. And now we cannot hold the expectation that we're going to get much fitter from a foundational standpoint. And what I mean by that is we're not looking at this part of the year as a barometer of success to see our maximal steady state go out, our functional threshold go up, our benchmarks go up. We're not looking to try and gain more power now. What we're looking to do is to train for the specific demands of the race. And that shifts the lens a little bit because we're not driving to boost physiology. What we're driving towards is being race ready. And so I think it's better to think more in terms of the key sessions. And I'm going to give you a little case study in a second. But it's much more around the key sessions that you need to do that are race specific over the preconceived notion that more is better. It's also important to think about executing those key sessions really well so that they will help you be better on race day. So that becomes about the details. That becomes about terrain management, making sure you're accompanying them with good fueling, good hydration habits. Just this week, we have Sarah Piampiano, who's getting ready for the Hawaii Ironman, and she's out in Hawaii. And she's out there for 2 weeks, about 13 days. And so you would think, okay, you're about 5 or 6 weeks out of the race itself. She's getting ready for Hawaii. She's out there on a training camp. Big opportunity to do big work. But in fact, the mindset is very, very different from that. The mindset for her now is she's been training since before the turn of the new year. She's layered many, many months of consistent training. She's layered the opportunity to do multiple races, half Ironman and Ironman races. Now it's time to go to Hawaii. And our mindset is in the 13 days that she's out there, the whole training program is anchored around 3 sessions. So we want her to do 3 main days of work. Now, it doesn't mean that the rest of the time she lies on the beach or she does easy training or recovery, but it's all about setting up the program to have 3 really key opportunities to do 3 challenging sessions that are race specific that will help her in the middle of October. And outside of that, there's still some tough swims. There's some open water swimming. There's some double swim days. There's some high power days on the bike. But it's all anchored emotionally around taking a similar volume of training load that she would do on a regular week in San Francisco and doing it on the course for race specificity with no more, but making sure that the key sessions are done really, really well. And there's lessons there for us. The key for us coming out of it is make sure the quality of those days are really, really good so that you can imprint learning. And of course, most of us won't get to go to the race site, do them on the race, do it on the course specifically, but we can anchor our weeks in that. It's all about my Wednesday session, my Saturday session of this week. That's what I'm going to build it on. How can I build success? And rather than looking to just look for a linear increase in doing faster or more, Just focus on doing it really, really well under the intent of the workout that's prescribed. And your other sessions, not just trying to, in fear-based mind, get fitter and fitter, but instead follow the intent of that as well with a big picture mindset. And it's really, really helpful and liberating to get forward from there. In the supporting sessions, don't change a thing. So make sure that you continue to focus and prioritize on sleep. Make sure that you continue to have good fueling habits. And don't do things that are dramatically different. The only caveat that we might bring in is something like the HEAT protocol that we've talked about many times before. And so I think it's better in the back season racing to set ourselves up, give ourselves a bit of liberty, a little liberation, and say, more is not better. I'm not trying to get much fitter right now. I'm not trying to create bigger numbers. I'm trying to do more with my numbers, and I'm trying to get race ready. And it is much better to arrive at your back season, your end of season races, fit, but fresh. You've heard that before. Hormonally and emotionally fresh, equipped to actually go and have a race day, than it is on the back end of trying to look in every nook and cranny and trying to sneak. I need to get a little bit lighter. I need to get a little bit fitter and try and cram more in. Period. Underline. The only difference, the one tangent, is for the time-starved athlete who only has so many hours a week to train and has just changed their lens. And let's use a case study because it's early September now, is now moving towards their Ironman race of the year. Let's call it Ironman Arizona in November. The one case study for them is if they are now moving to their first Ironman in the year, their weekly training hours probably won't change very much. But we do know in the race build that there are some single sessions or double days on the week or the weekend where globally myself or your coach or the custom programming will actually ask you to do a longer session to get ready for that race, and that is a race specific. So yes, the only time that you're doing more training relative to the rest of the year is if you're in your Ironman race build and you're already a time-starved athlete. But for the majority of athletes, this training is not about piling more and more hours. Yes, it's Ironman training, but it's not about more is better, is the underlying message that we're talking about today. So that's my thought on the lens of late season races. Better to go in slightly underdone than it is overdone. And that expressed itself this weekend for some athletes. And so with Liz here, as she was first, and Ali was also first here today, we're going to start with Liz and Ali and see if we have any questions. If not, we can dive into general questions today. And if anyone has a question as we come about late season racing, I'm sure we'll get into it. Liz, any questions today as we go through?
I don't have a question about late season racing. But
you've got Matt Dixon illness. You've got Matt Dixon disease. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me at all? Nothing?
I can't hear a thing. With my first attempt at doing this, if you want to type a question on the message, and then we can do it. If you want to put a chat, and then I'll answer you. Ali, I know I can hear you.
Well, I could hear Liz just fine.
It must be on mine. Hang on, guys. It must be mine. Hang on. Bizarre.
Muted right now, but I could hear her when she was talking before.
Ali, talk to me.
I'm still talking. I'm here. Can you hear me or no? Uh-oh. Well, I was talking.
Yeah.
You can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Give me 1 second.
So we can all hear each other. He just can't hear us.
I can hear you.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, I can hear everyone else too.
Yeah. And you guys can hear me. Yes?
We can hear you just
Now we know it's our fault, right?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. All right.
Congrats, Jordan, by the way. Awesome.
Thank you. And congrats to Chris, too. He had a great race in Chattanooga.
Any luck? Liz, you want to try
Any
again?
luck? I can hear you like a whistle. I'm going full airline pilot. Now I can hear you. Let's go back to Liz.
All right. I also typed it. So when I'm swimming, especially I notice on the 50-meter pool, if I swim breathing to one side versus the other, I have a weaker side where I swim about 4 to 5 seconds slower. Is there anything I can do to improve that so that there's not such a discrepancy between the two?
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question. Do you tend to be bilaterally, or do you typically just swim on one side?
Jerry broke me of my bilateral swimming, so now I do one length down one way and then the other one back the other way. So. Okay.
I don't think you have to. It's nice to be able to breathe on both sides, but the vast majority, like if you were going to go and do, and there's some conditions that change this, what I'll talk about, but if you're going to go and do your race at Chattanooga, you can breathe on your favorite side the whole time. That's your rhythmic side. That's the whole time. When you train, you can pretty much breathe. It is good to be able to breathe on your other side. And is your left side your least favorite? Okay, so breathe on your right side. So it's important. So it's very hard for me to say this is what you're doing wrong without seeing a little video on you. But the reasons why you need to at least be able to breathe on that side is if your left side is more favored, if there's chop coming in from this side, or it's really blinding sun off your, or if you're happen to be on the left side of the group, and then you need to see what's going on over there if you're swimming with the buoys over there. So you need to be able to breathe both sides, but for the most part, 90% of your swimming can be on your more favored side. The best place to learn it is, so the first thing we have to understand what's going on with your unfavored side, and the chances are that what's happening when you're breathing to your right is you're probably lifting the head or turning the head or doing something, and what you're probably losing is all of your hold on the water. Your left hand, as you're breathing to your right, which is their favorite, is almost for sure just going straight down. It is the sight unseen type side. When you're swimming easy, when it's low stress, doing some of the purple patch drill and working on timing is a really good thing. So actually doing some of the purple patch drill on single side on your least favorite side, so you can get that feeling. But it's in the middle of a main set, 9 times out of 10, breathe your preferred side. And Jordan needs to start coaching for us, because she just said the same thing probably before I said it. So listen to Jordan's advice.
Except I'm a terrible swimmer.
A much improved terrible swimmer. Ali.
Keeping on the swimming theme. I got coached a couple weeks ago when Michael O was not able to make the Sunday swim. He had Laurence's brother come in, who's, unfortunately, I don't remember his name, not enough caffeine. But he was saying that my form looked really good, but that I just lacked power. And I'm wondering, I guess, how to get better purchase on the water to get more power, or where I should, what's sort of a standard fix for lacking that.
Well, the truth is, so that's in the same vein that I think Jerry once said, you swim very pretty, you swim with nice form. So it's so the few things. The first is the connection, the timing of the pool. So actually that purple patch drill that we talk about is really, really good for you, but we have to make sure you're doing it well, appropriately, so you're actually getting the connection. The second is doing a lot of work with the ankle strap on, and probably with you, the ankle strap with a buoy, with the fact that your shoulders can, to the amount that your shoulders can handle it. so that you're actually really able to create propulsion. And some of it is an awareness thing. 2 years ago in Hawaii and last year in Hawaii, the one thing I said to you is your hand cannot move back through the water at the same speed. So when you actually create propulsion and hand, once you have a certain on the water, from that place to when it's exiting at one speed, it goes from slow to fast, looking to maintain all of the purchase that you have on that water. That's what power is, acceleration while moving that water back. And that's the thing that creates acceleration. The vast majority of swimmers who are weaker swimmers, so as you go down the line from the Lawrences and Lawrence's brother, who by the way missed the Olympic team by 1/100th of a second. But once you go from that all the way down to the weaker swimmers, the biggest thing that changes is the amount of movement that occurs forward with each stroke. And that is directly related to how much is held, but really it's how fast the hand is moving through the water with the purchase, because that's the thing that creates speed, yeah? Much more than just getting pretty and slippery.
Okay, I've also tried swimming from the hips with some, I think that's probably what you're driving at with the purple patch drill.
That's the purple patch drill.
And I've had some good luck with that, but I just wanted to make sure I touched base with you on that because I'd really like to. Pretty as pretty does.
Well, it is, you know, I had a conversation with a friend of mine this weekend that was talking about running and actually the rhythm and connection. He's an absolutely awful runner. He's very ugly at running, but he really generates power. And he's on this this episode right here, but we were talking about joining the dots and connecting, and it expresses all of his inadequacies are expressed on the bike and into the swim, but it's exactly what we're talking about, is that, joking aside, is that connection, that acceleration. Because what it isn't is this. It's actually getting this and boom, it's vaulting. And the truth is, here's something that sometimes helps. Hand enters the water, hand holds the water. Rather than thinking about moving water backwards, it might help you to think about vaulting the body over the hand. Okay, so the hand, so if it's easier to actually think about it in kayaking. So you know when people kayak, so if the oar goes in the water, boom, imagine if you have hold of the water here. Now you want to move your boat over that oar that's actually, or the paddle that's anchored in the water. It's the same thing as swimming. The purple patch drill, you're looking to boom, accelerate, yeah? So sometimes it's helpful for people to feel like I'm not moving water backwards fast, but I'm actually anchoring, holding, moving my body past the hand. Not that you ever will do that, but that might be something. So it takes real violence. And that's why we do short intervals, because most people don't have the strength and resilience to maintain acceleration for long periods of time. So we have to train that. So it's really good. Sometimes, like if we've sometimes given, even our pros, 100 times 25 on 25. That's because that's going to get much more purchase with acceleration on the water than if we just do 100 laps. Because over the time, acceleration and tension will die, so you get a little bit of recovery. And of course, that's expressed with 20 times 50, 30 times 50, 20 times 50 into 10, 25s, whatever it might be. So the short intervals is the best way to really focus it, but it's an emotional commitment to say every one of these 50s I'm going to do with good purchase and acceleration. And once I lose that purchase and acceleration, and then I reset, I start again. And even with some of my individually coached athletes, that might be a 50 low stress with purple patch drill and then come back to it. Okay. Then of course, you have to train doing 400s and you have to train doing 2100s, but the place that we're really working on it is those short intervals. Help? That's a good one for everyone. Now, let's go to a very pretty runner. Chris Wright, welcome.
Hello. You can thank the hurricane for that. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah, I can now.
When I got to my phone yesterday after the race, I had an email from Delta that I guess all flights out of Atlanta today were just done. So here I am with a few hours to spare. I'm still in Chattanooga, and if you don't know me, I'm a terrible runner. I used to be able to run, but we're trying to sort of join the dots back together. But oddly, as that's happened, I've actually become an okay swimmer. So you never do know how things are going to turn out.
That's very true. How was your day yesterday?
I actually, because I was feeling charitable, I wrote a thank you note to you and Jesse on the page. I don't know if you saw it, but for the benefit of the others, I thought Matt and Jesse both did an extraordinarily useful job in the pre-race talk we had at Chattanooga, where they really just made the case that it would not be a good idea to get World Champs fever and just say, well, my plan is to, because it's World Champs, go even harder than normal, and somehow I'll magically find reservoirs of mental strength that eluded me the last 100 times I raced. And so purely because of that really effective meeting, I ended up racing within myself and just trying to hold that 5% back. And as I put in the little note on the page, it's just remarkable how that 5% less than what you think you should be doing morphs into all you can do and a little bit more in the back half of the run. And this is a challenging course. You know, you're swimming upstream, you're biking some very solid climbs in the first half of the ride, and you have monster sets of hills on the run twice. And so there's just no hiding. And I think the people who went a little hard, even if you just swam hard and did the first part of the bike hard, you were fried. Your day was done and you just didn't know it yet. And so I may have been a little bit cautious early on, but I tell you what, the last 30 minutes of the run, I was not wishing I'd done more work on the bike. I truly, truly wasn't. So thank you again. Very valuable.
No, it's great. And it is worth for everyone that wasn't there to sort of hear that, because our message for Chattanooga was a tougher course than even all the homework we did. It was still tougher than we thought it was. And it was tough. It was a tough day. And our advice was there were two things. The first was to race the course and not the competition, which really extends, I will use again, I'm sure in Hawaii, I had to think of something to say to try and get people to buy into it. And the second was to be that 5% more cautious in the front end. And no one, I don't think anyone that did that really well felt like they had been overcautious. It was a very challenging day. So Chris, well, thank you for listening, and well done for executing, because that's the tough part. Let's go to Scott, who doesn't have much time in the day with his new commute, but anything for us today, Scotty?
A couple things. I actually do have a question, and I think it involves the commute. But I can actually go back to what you were saying to Ali. Your reference there, actually, what you said there was one of the biggest changes that I made mentally. It was actually back in high school in rowing, when I was out on a recruiting trip, and the coach was there saying, it's like, okay, the oar goes in the water. What do you do? It's like, well, you pull on the oar. And of course, he's a guy from Philadelphia and gets all upset. He's like, no, you don't pull. You start pushing with your feet and you drive the boat past the blade. You don't rip the oar through the water. So same idea of just that mental change of saying, well, I just need to move my hand through the water fast. There's a lot of ways you can do that without actually going forward. But if you start thinking of driving your body forward past your hand, maybe I should try that while swimming. It might help me out. But
yeah, Scott. So two things before you ask your question. Firstly, Scott rowed for Harvard, so it's a good lesson. He wasn't a bad rower. So if he was a bad rower, we wouldn't listen to him as good. And then secondly, Scott, before we go on, congratulations, you're getting married this weekend.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to hear.
Excited for that. I won't admit that I'm also here as I'm listening to this, trying to write my vows as well.
No comment.
Yes, I guess now to the question. I've been noticing for a number of reasons, from the job and the commute to wedding planning and everything else, my training has fallen way off in the last few weeks, which was sort of expected. But I'm noticing even now, like when I go out and run and things, I'm getting, sort of, particularly the day after, hip pain. I have some pain in my hip flexors. And I'm wondering if some of that was coming on even before I was, really backed off on the hours. And my first guess would be, sort of tight hip flexor and in the groin. It's like, could that just be from spending 2 to 2.5 hours a day sitting in the car and not doing enough to stretch that out?
Sitting and driving, it's the Activate 100%. And there you go. Just listen to Jordan. She just said it as well.
I get my hip flexors tighten up massively on long drives. That was as soon as you started talking, I'm like, oh my God, he's sitting in the car for so long.
Yeah, just listen.
But whatever
to
Matt says, ignore me.
Right. It's some activation work, a little bit of foam roller. In fact, when you arrive down at work, and you do live in a company, you do work in a company that would accept that. I think universally, but it's 2 to 3 minutes. I would connect with Mike Lord and say, hey, give me the top 5 things to do that take less than 5 minutes. But I think it's
I'll probably do that
for you.
Yeah, my sort of build off of that is frequently, and I think this is one of the things that particularly hurts me is, I will drive down here and then work out down here. So my day doesn't start off sort of getting up, having having breakfast and, getting moving a little bit and then start a run. I get up, I sit in the car for an hour, and then I get out of the car and go on a run for an hour and then sit at my desk.
And you do that and it accumulates and you just, Yeah.
So I was thinking probably be worth it to cut 5 or 10 minutes off the run and go through all of review the videos and stuff you have of the, all the mobility and just, basic activation work of, getting the hips opened up and things before I start trying to run. That might help me out.
Yeah, I think the dream is almost before you get in the car, and then it's like the dynamic run warm up. That there is a video right on just says dynamic run warm up. That's the stuff, and that would just really, really help.
All right, I'll give that a try. Or I'll just stop working out altogether and.
Or just decline and turn into an old man. That's your other option.
I'm well on my way.
Let's go to.
All right, thanks.
Good man. I want to go to Mary if she's there. Last time we spoke to Mary. Are you there, Mary? Sure, if she's unmuting or not. Mary is.
Can you hear me now?
Hello. I can hear you. How are you doing?
Sorry. I'm doing well. I'm in Kona, so I was I'm in Waikoloa, so I'm particularly interested in hearing about your approach on Sarah. So that was very interesting.
Oh, good. Where are you right now?
At Waikoloa. I've left Adelaide weather and escaped to some sunshine.
Oh, Paul is there with Sarah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll drop him an email and see if we can catch up.
Absolutely. You can come and do a session with you. For sure, you'll be able to connect. There you go. Free training with you with Paul Buick.
Yeah.
Done.
As he disappeared.
On us.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
On us. No, let's do it. Let's do it. I'll connect. And the last time we spoke, by the way, you were going to go and do a very hot race that you're worried about, and you did win your age group, so it didn't go too badly.
No,
but
I didn't. It was. You were right about the run. It was an absolute death march. There was not an ounce of shade, and it was 36 degrees with 90% humidity. And I thought, I saw my friend running the other way, and I thought, she looks like she's so hot. She doesn't look like she's enjoying herself at all. And after the race, she said that was what she thought when she saw me. Like, it just looked terrible. Like, it was very hot.
Goodness me.
So I was happy with that. I do have a quick question. 2 things. I've forgotten the time difference between here and Adelaide is about 20 hours. And so they're now sort of in the morning of the next day here. So what is the formula roughly for how long I should take how long I can expect it to take before I start feeling not complete rubbish?
Well, the time change for you is 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah, 20. It's 20, but it doesn't matter what calendar day it is, does it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
So shift your lens and make it a 4 hour change. So what's the time of day there right now? It's 1 o'clock or 2, yeah, almost 2 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's and so it's 10 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
No, here it's about 1:30. No, here it's nearly 2. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and is it? And Adelaide. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock in the morning in Adelaide, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way you think about it. You don't worry about what day of the week it is. So in fact, it's not that bad of a shift. It's a 4-hour shift rather than 20. And physiologically, the body doesn't understand the calendar. It only understands that. So it's going to take you. When did you arrive there?
Last night.
Yeah, it's going to take you about 2 or 3 days before you self-correct. But it won't take you 20 because it actually doesn't have to catch up. It's just 4, so it'll take you 2 or 3 days to self-correct.
Okay. Thanks.
It's good. No, it's good. It's a normal question. It's good. So in fact, ironically, the hardest is the sort of the 10, 11 hour or 10, 11 hour shifts, 13, 14 hour shifts sort of thing. Those are the really hard things where they really disrupt you. Or 8, 9 hours are not easy, but the 20 hours and the 22 hours is nowhere near as bad. A 21-hour shift is the same as West Coast to East Coast, West Coast to East Coast, San Francisco to New York type change.
Okay, so really it's just the horrendous travel time.
The reason you're really butchered is the fact that you spent all that time traveling is the biggest thing. So it'll take you a couple of days, and you're in a hot environment, so you've got to be patient with the training and just let it come to you really gradually, acclimate to the heat, and you'll feel fine in a couple of days.
Okay, thanks for that. Cheers.
Good stuff. No, good stuff. Super Dave.
I actually got 2 questions. One is a sanity question. So yesterday's swim workout pre-main had 121 times 50. I'm assuming that's due to your finger size.
That is look at that.
Yep.
At that,
okay.
Yep.
Because I was quite sure that it wasn't the Meredith Kessler pretty easy warm up at that many 50s. The other part is I seem to swim slower with fins than without fins.
Wow.
So at least for the 50. It seems that as soon as you put big feet on my feet, it kind of all goes to it's a coordination issue, and I seem to kick slower or not as efficient. Is that something I should work on, or because at 3.8K it doesn't really matter, I shouldn't really worry too much given that I swim faster without fins?
Well, let's go to Jordan. No, a couple of things. So yes, we were working it a little bit because I think it's there, but the fins are globally used to actually help get your feet up without, so that you can naturally lift your feet. And actually helps with, so we talked, I was joking about Chris without using his name, but the coordination, the fins tend to help with that a little bit. And if that's not a big part of your stroke, then sometimes that can become a little destabilizing is what it probably sounds like from you. Some people as well, Laura Siddell being one of them, where they just, for some unbeknownst reason, completely stop kicking when they have fins on. And so she, like you, really hates putting fins on. Really hates them because she just I said, let it go, let the ankles loosen, and kick your legs a little bit. Like they're only going to move you forward faster if you do actually allow the leg kick to continue in the same way. So she kicks like this. So don't do this with fins on, because then they won't help. So just the way to get used to that, the way that I fix that with her, or am fixing that with that, is having her do some backstroke kicking on the back with great streamline or without, or actually even some dolphin kick on the back so that you actually feel like your connection. Bizarrely, dolphin kick on the back is pretty good to do. And that's just getting that feeling, which then is ultimately, I mean, this is what we want with our feet in swimming. That's what swimmers has. This is what triathletes have. So when you put fins on, we want it to gradually move to here. But if we look at, that's what we want. So dolphin kicking will help that. And then we turn it upside down. and it's just generally quite light freestyle swimming sort of thing.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else? Last chance for follow-ups or quick questions? If not, we know that Chris Wright will be out going for Southern Barbecue as he can't get home to LA, but we were there. One more thing, Jordan, well done for your age group win at Santa Cruz as you're here. Not sure if anyone else raced really well. Well done to Chris, super racing. And best of luck to Scott this weekend for his wedding. Fantastic stuff. I hope it goes great. Don't let it bypass, should be super. All right, guys, onward and upward. We'll move on, but very much enjoyed the session. Take care.
Thanks, man.